where this is going to take me. I mean, I could win, okay, and I could not win.
Basically, my campaign starts here, nowhere else.
And you can argue with me if you want. You won't hurt my feelings.
Your task is to do the best that you can possibly do.
Well, welcome back to Candidate Cafe. I'm Josh McKelvin. You know, what better way to get to know someone on a personal level than to actually share a meal with them? Over the past few months, with the help of the Institute of Politics at St. Anselm College, a group of undecided voters have done just that with the candidates. And from kids to grandkids, sports to movies, we've covered everything, even holiday traditions. But our next candidate has had to stop making Christmas dinner in recent years. His family's traditional menu simply takes too much time. But food is important to Florida Senator Marco Rubio, with shared meals shaping this Republican almost as much as his passion for football.
I doubt I'm going to get to eat, guys, so we'll just move the menu here because I'm still hungry.
At a fit 44, Marco Rubio doesn't really need to watch his weight, but there are some foods he says you'll never find on his plate.
The only things I don't eat anything raw, like no raw tuna. I don't eat bait. I like California roll. I never ate any kind of sushi, but California roll I'll eat because it's not real sushi, but anything that's raw, I can't eat. Like, I see people eat these tuna steaks that are, I just can't do it. I'm not saying it's bad for you or whatever, I just can't eat it. I don't like mushrooms and I don't like sour cream.
They are the simple X's and O's of the Rubio diet, which shouldn't be surprising given that the game of football has always been a passion and, in a way, part of his life's playbook.
You mentioned football and, you know, your past in football. Do you find that to be valuable for the long stretch, as you call it, and being a target at times by others?
In terms of my experience having played and been involved, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I always say about football, it's a great teacher of life lessons that I find very hard to replicate in any other sport. You face adversity, especially in a close game. You want to be as prepared as possible. The better prepared you are for what you know to expect, the better prepared you are for the unexpected. So you come up with a plan that gives you the best chance to win, but then you have to execute it. You know, you can be the greatest game plan in the world. If you don't execute the plan, that's where 90% of the game is in the execution, not in the hype surrounding it. Drowning out crowd noise. If you were a coach and you were listening to the people in the stands telling you what to do, run the ball, pass the ball, I mean, you'd go nuts. You have to call your game and then let it play out the way it does. That's a longer answer you were probably expecting. The answer is yes.
His wife of 17 years also has a connection to football. At one point, a cheerleader for his favorite team, the Miami Dolphins. But he chose a different climate to pop the question.
You know, we went to New York on a day trip, and it was really cold. At least by Miami standards, which is not. It was cold. And we went to the top of the Empire State Building, and she didn't want to go because it was cold, and I couldn't think of anything. I finally said, I love the movie King Kong. I want to see. And she's like, well, that wasn't real. Like, there really wasn't a King Kong up there. And I go, I know, but I still want to see it. So we went to the observation deck up on the top, and that's where I proposed on Valentine's Day of 1997. And then she always has to say the same story. After I gave her the ring, I took it back, and I said, can I just hold it till we get downstairs? Because somehow I got it in my head that she was going to drop the ring over the side of the Empire State Building, and we would never find it, obviously.
What motivated you to get into politics? Were your parents interested in politics at all?
Not beyond being voters. They weren't overly political people. They followed it, but they were busy. They were, you know, they weren't, I didn't grow up in a political household. My grandfather, who lived with us until he passed away when I was 13. He loved history and political things and was a huge Reagan fan, and so I grew up very close to him until he passed away, so he had a big influence. I think it was a natural interest that was fed. There's a curiosity that found a source in my grandfather. So I always had an interest. I remember I've been following elections since 1980. I was following the NFL much more closely. But when politics would heat up, I would follow it. I remember following the 80 election, the 84, the 90, you know, I followed them all. And so, or the 88 election, I should say. But I really didn't get politically engaged until I got into college, and I found the opportunity to volunteer on a congressional campaign.
A lawyer by trade, Rubio himself started his career in public life shortly after accepting a spot in code enforcement in West Miami.
For a few months. And while on the code enforcement board, the mayor of the city came to me and said, are you interested in running for city commission? And I said, well, what does it entail? And it says, two-hour meetings a month, and it pays like $100 a month. And I said, sure, let's do it. So I ran, and it required me to knock door to door, the whole community. We knocked literally on every door. 800 people voted. I got elected. And that's how I really began. And it really, I mean, I say West Miami is like being on a condominium board, but without the power of a condominium board. But it was very gratifying. It was, you know, that campaign was very gratifying because I got to interact with voters one-on-one and learned a lot.
Things seem to have always happened fast for Rubio, moving swiftly from the Speaker of the House in Florida to the U.S. Senate and now to his bid for the White House. He's had 4 children along the way, starting with a daughter, and he recognizes the importance of not missing too much.
And, so to me, that's always, I've kind of borrowed wisdom from people that perhaps have lived longer than I have in that regard, and that's always stuck with me. I don't want to, my kids, my youngest will never be 8 years old again. My oldest will never be 15 again. So these days that you can't get back. And so I understand there's a trade-off. What I'm doing is for them too, because it's for their generation. But I also want to make sure that there's a balance there, because I can't get this time back, you know, and I want to be a part of their lives, not just because I like doing it, but because it's the most important job that I have. You only get about 14 years to really begin to influence them, and then you start to lose influence with your kids. And if you haven't laid that foundation, it becomes real problematic.
So are you ready for her to date?
No, I'm not.
And with a dad that might be president, Rubio says that his kids are at different levels of understanding.
Wow. So what do they think? I grew up in a
About all
political
of this?
family. What do they think about the whole thing? Yeah.
So the 8 and 10-year-old are somewhat aware that something's going on, you know, but I mean, basically their earliest recollections, like for the 8-year-old, he was 3 when I ran for the Senate, so to him it's like everyone's dad is running for something, right? Yeah, the 8-year-old is a little bit, but they're not really. The 13-year-old is the one that follows it more closely. She kind of, and I have to, you know, I always have to tell them, looking, you know, don't be, some of the new stuff isn't going to be nice, you know, so just, not everybody in the world likes me, you know, so. And the 15-year-old she follows it. She's a little bit more apolitical. She likes issues, but she's not into the politics. The 13-year-old has more interest in the day-to-day of it for some reason and follows it pretty closely and is always coming up to me and said, I heard this, I heard that, and I'm like, don't watch the news. The opposite of what people tell their kids to do. Stay off.
As you might imagine, Rubio tries hard to make it to as many of his kids' sporting events as possible, and in his downtime, likes to take in the occasional flick.
What's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie? I have several. Look, I love Godfather 1 and 2. I didn't like 3 that much. I love this movie. My wife hates this movie, but I don't know why I like it. It's like 4 movies in one. It's called Pulp Fiction. Wedding Crashers. I just thought that was the funny. I never laughed so hard in a movie. One of the movies that I thought was one of the best done movies I've ever seen, and it really had an impact on us, was The Passion of the Christ. And from a historical perspective, you can't watch that and conclude that Jesus was anything but a man's man. I mean, he had to have been a physically strong individual just to survive. Didn't sleep all night. Almost bled to death by being whipped, and then had to carry a cross up a hill and then was crucified, and he still survived. Most people would have died on the way to the cross. So all of it, I think is a very well done, and that film really captured that.
What do you have on your bucket list that's wild and crazy that you want to do?
I just want to go to a Super Bowl where the Dolphins are playing it. That's wild and crazy, believe me.
Big bucket.
I know.
Another thing on his wish list outside of the Super Bowl, an examination of his heritage by one day visiting a free Cuba.
And be able to go to the cemetery where my grandparents are buried, to the area where my grandfather's family grew up as sharecroppers on a farm, you know, to the store where my parents worked. My dad was a security guard, my mother was a cashier, and they met at this basically Five and Dime in Havana. I'd love to be able to go see all that, and right now I can't, but my hope is that I'll be able to not just go myself, but take my children too.
So does Rubio have a plan B if politics doesn't pan out?
Sure, I'd love to be a general manager for an NFL team. I'd love to, you know.
Well, even if he does make it to the White House, Rubio still has a plan to take down Tom Brady and the Patriots.
I think I'm going to offer him, Gronkowski, and Belichick jobs in my administration, just to get him out of the NFL.
Democrat Martin O'Malley, he had a special guest on the day that he joined us for Canada Cafe, and that was his son William. In fact, O'Malley says it was his parents that gave him a passion for public service, and it's a tradition he hopes to pass on to his own family.
I'm a truant today.
And with that admission, Martin O'Malley's son William made this Canada Cafe a family affair.
William, are you enjoying this?
We're doing pretty well.
We rarely get fed.
And we rarely have this many nice people around us. So I mean.
So.
William, I do have a question for you.
Okay.
You're 18 years old?
I am. Just turned 18 November 10th.
Does having your dad run for president help you with your social life?
Oh, I go to a
18-year-old daughter.
Yeah. I go to a thoroughly Republican school, which is, and I have lots of Republican friends, but my I think the first sticker I saw in our school's parking lot was a Trump bumper sticker. So I wouldn't say the immediate social impacts at school have been necessarily positive, but I have a very tightly knit, well-organized Young Democrats club that tries to stay involved, and we beat the Republicans in turnout every week. Not that anyone's counting, but.
I think he was asking about your dating life and your social life.
Oh.
And it's his son who has stepped up on the campaign trail since his wife isn't allowed to.
My wife's a judge. So Katie's been on the District Court of Maryland for, I guess, about 14 years. And she's a far better lawyer than I ever was, which is why she's a judge. So because she's a judge, she's not allowed to campaign. But William comes out all the time. Nobody's been better in terms of time on the road than William has. He sent me an email. I was in Iowa at the time. And he sent me a text. He said, Dad, I'm speaking tomorrow to 200 Democrats. Was it in Stafford County?
I think it was Jasper. Was this back in?
Yeah, he says, I'm speaking here to about 200 Democrats. I'm speaking on the stage right after Bernie Sanders. Next sentence was, yes, you read that last sentence correctly.
Sometimes Martin O'Malley's mother gets involved, too, at least to keep him in line.
Yes, sometimes when I use salty language on social media, she scolded me once and said, you shouldn't have used that word. All my friends say that they saw you use that word on Face Page. I said, Mom, what's Face Page? Oh, you know what I'm talking about.
But all kidding aside, he credits his parents as the biggest reason of where he is today.
The people that inspired me to get into public service were, first and foremost, my parents. I mean, my parents were born into the Great Depression, and then were part of that generation Brokaw called the Greatest Generation. But the cool thing about that generation to me is that they never take that title upon themselves. They believe every generation, and they taught us as kids that every generation of Americans has the responsibility and the opportunity to accomplish great things. So like a lot of parents, they taught the six of us to love God, love our country, and love our family, but they also taught me something else that I didn't realize was a little less common, and that is that politics is actually an honorable and a noble activity, a noble service, and that all of us need to be engaged and involved because that's how our country works, when our country works best.
In addition to that influence, O'Malley says it was his time as a prosecutor that made him decide to run for office.
I then ran in 1990 for state senate after being frustrated as a prosecutor, seeing the same problems, and I lost that race by 20 votes, they tell me, on the absentee ballots. Not that I remember. and then the next year, a seat opened on the Baltimore City Council. I hadn't thought that I would be effective at all in municipal government and city council, but turns out there was probably a much better placement for my energies than the state senate might have been. And being of service to others, I think all of us have a need to be needed, don't we? I mean, it's a very basic human need to be needed. And we hope in our own discernment process about where our talents are best used that we can be of service to others. And I can't imagine spending my energies on anything that could have made me happier, or where I would have touched as many people in as many positive ways as I have, doing what I was doing, not because times were easy, but because times were difficult.
And there were many challenges he says he faced as he made his way through the ranks of political life in Maryland, always feeling a calling to stay involved.
So I told my wife, you've got to let me try, because I can live with losing. I can't live with not trying, and knowing that hundreds and hundreds of young men died for no reason because we didn't have the willingness to try.
And he did try. He was not only mayor of Baltimore, but also governor of Maryland. A busy life, although he did have some fun. He was, after all, in a band.
So when I was in high school, I fell into playing music with my football coach at my school. And at the time, there was about 7 full-time Irish bars in the area and only 3 full-time bands. And so we weren't very good, but we started getting hired. And we did the same 20 songs every night. And so from the age of 17, I was playing in bars, and sometimes 3 or 4 nights a week. He's looking at me crazy. Yeah, I would. No, I would never let you do that. And I continued to do it. Even when the guys got older, the guys in the first band, there were 4 of us, and when they got older and got married, their wives didn't think the band was as cool as they did when they were their girlfriends. And so then I was solo for a long time, and then started up another band called O'Malley's March. That was a trio, but in this latest iteration, it's 7 of us. Full set of drums, electric guitar, electric bass. And when I was mayor, I was able to play pretty regularly, usually once a month, because when you're mayor, everything's near. So I could make a black tie event and still manage to have a black T-shirt on and get down to McGinn's and for downbeat at 10 p.m. But governor, I couldn't do that as much, so we peeled back, and we only played a few times a year. So you ask, is the band together? It's together in a virtual sort of sense. We haven't played together in a long time, but for us, it's like rolling off a log. We could get together tomorrow, and still, some of the guys I've now played with for 15 or going on 20 years.
Well, former Virginia Governor Jim Gilmore is a self-described bookworm, even though it did take a few tries to get through his favorite novel. In the end, it was all worth it, and it gave the Republican a whole new view of the world itself.
Jim Gilmore can boast quite a list of accomplishments. As a former intelligence officer in the Army, Attorney General, Governor of Virginia, just a few of the highlights. But he tried to convince our cafe audience that there's still a regular Joe behind that resume.
Oh, I'm a pretty normal guy, really. You know, I mean, really.
We're just normal people.
Yeah. Look, what I do is I read all the time. I read constantly. I buy books and I read books. I've got a library at home of over 3,000 books, and I've read most of them. And I continue to read. I read all the time. And, you know, I like to watch sports on TV. I've got my teams. I never am successful when I'm in New Hampshire talking about them, but...
With thousands of books digested, his favorite is the one that helped him learn a certain approach to life.
Yeah, well, you know, it took me a long time to figure this out. I tried to read Moby Dick about 12 times, you know, coming along, and nobody ever reads Moby Dick. But I did. One day I said, well, what is this book all about? And I found that Melville had something to say, or he wouldn't have put it in the book. So it requires patience. And, you know, I've learned now several things in life. I've learned, this took a long time to learn. I've learned that you ought to listen more instead of talking so much. You ought to be patient, which I've always been an impatient guy. That's why I've done so much in politics and public life and all that kind of thing. You know, and, you know, listen and patience and relationships with people. And that's something that took me a long time. Because coming up in politics, I was a young guy that worked my way up pretty fast, and it was crash, bang, you know. And now that I've come to the point in life where I begin to realize that relationships are awfully important. So that's where Moby Dick comes in. Moby Dick is about reading every chapter and trying to figure out what the guy was trying to say, as opposed to just trying to get through the plot. We Americans are taught to read books for plot. You know, what happened. We watch the television, what happened. And he's not doing that at all. He's talking about much more complex things in Moby Dick. Anyway,
complex things for a candidate who has analyzed complex situations since he was a young man.
I went to the public high school. We didn't go, the idea of going to private school someplace, we didn't have the money for that. So I went to the public school and then somehow got into the University of Virginia and studied foreign policy, among other things. And that was a big revelation to me because I was so narrow as a kid, and suddenly the world kind of opened up and I began to see all these things.
And he saw even more after the Army sent him to Germany to be an intelligence agent during the Cold War.
Well, I didn't wear a uniform in Europe. I was always in plain clothes. My hair was long, and you know, I spoke German pretty doggone well. I really did. Got to be really good. And you know, I looked and acted like a guy that just was kind of a college student. I was a young soldier, and most people could figure out I was an American, but they didn't quite know exactly what I was. But you know, my job there was to be in support of NATO. I was trained to be an offensive intelligence agent, but I was actually used as a counterintelligence agent mostly in Europe. And we knew that the Russians and the East Germans were constantly trying to penetrate NATO and to understand what the defenses were like for Western Europe. Because there might come a time when the Russian interest was to, in fact, invade, and we had to prevent that, we had to be prepared at all times.
His understanding of the language and zeal for his principles did come in useful in other situations, too.
I remember one Christmas I was there and I couldn't go home. I didn't have leave, so I couldn't go home. And so there I was in Heidelberg, and all the students at the University of Heidelberg that I usually hung around with were gone. And it was snowy. I still remember being in Heidelberg, and I went into one of the bars and I was having a beer, and there was only nobody there. And I walked down the stairs, and I heard a couple. There was only one other couple in the bar, and they were a man and a woman, a girl and a boy, and they were talking. And they were talking in German, of course, and the girl said, "Well, don't you worry, when the revolution comes, things will be much better." And I stopped and I said to him in German, "That's absolute baloney." And I ended up dating a girl for 3 years.
Gilmer had stories about his time in Germany, but also some sobering ones from his tenure as governor of Virginia.
I was in New York the day before on September 10th. And I was right near the World Trade Center, as a matter of fact. I'm not going to take a lot of your time talking about all that unless you want to know, but I did get back to Virginia in time to be in the mansion at the time of the attack. I turned on the TV just like you all did, and I saw the World Trade Center, you know, in flames. And then I actually watched the second plane go into the second tower because we were all watching. And then at that point, I'm the governor. So what am I going to do, right? Well, I'm going to do what I have to do. I suddenly was a war governor, and I picked up the phone, and I activated the National Guard. I activated the Emergency Operations Control Center for the state of Virginia. I warned the state police to watch out for gunplay anywhere in the state and reported into the central headquarters. And then I got across the street to the governor's office in time to find out the second estate attack that day was Virginia. So the Pentagon's in Virginia. It's not in Washington. So, you know, everything that we had talked about in our previous 3 years came to pass. The police fire rescue went in there to address the Pentagon. Not the federal government. They were the victim. They weren't the responders. The fire department was the responders.
A real experience from someone who does have a lot, even though he says in this race he does feel overlooked, but he's certainly not giving up. Instead, using it as part of his narrative.
But I thought about it a lot. And, you know, I never came along in life with a silver spoon. My father, as I said, was a working man, a meat cutter, and you know, I never had the things that propel certain people forward. So, you know, I think that being excluded from the debates is no fun because you know practically that you need to be able to get your message out. But, you know another way, a lot of Americans are excluded and feel excluded, don't they? They do. They feel like they're left out. They feel like that other people have advantages that propel them forward, and they're frustrated too. So in a way, you know, what the experience I'm facing right now is an American experience, and I think the right answer to that is to persevere and come here and speak to folks like you and get my message out as best I can.
South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham is another major candidate who decided to pull the plug on his campaign before the New Hampshire primary. But in our cafe, he told diners no matter what happened, his bucket list includes a simple day on the links with friends.
If I had one thing left to do in life before I died, I'd like to play a round of golf with my oldest and best friends. That'd be a good way to check out.
At 63, Senator Graham has plenty of years ahead of him, and he too says he will play a role in this election, be it in the form of an endorsement, as he's already made for Jeb Bush, or highlighting the issues that will drive the choice that voters will make on Election Day. One of the great things about Candidate Cafe is that voters who did take part in the series from prior election cycles can now say they dined with the president. We're going to take a couple of minutes now to look back at some of the cafe moments with the candidates that you just might remember.
This is a New York Times bestseller by my wife, which means we now have dueling authors in our household. And it's about Ellis the elephant, who leads 4 to 8-year-olds through American history. And I watched her do this, and it all rhymes. And I write novels, and I write nonfiction. This is harder.
I hunt deer with a bow. So this is my grandfather, my dad, myself, and Griffin. That was in 1986. And obviously, I don't play golf. I shoot. And that's back on the family farm. That's Mom and Dad's house on Christmas Eve.
I was lucky enough that my mom, even though they divorced, always told me, you know, how smart he was and how, you know, he had gone back to Kenya and was involved in government. And so I got this image in my head. It turned out later that the image wasn't really accurate. He was, you know, that he was a troubled man. But you know, so part of my motivation was trying to live up to this image that wasn't around to, you know, where you could dispel the image.
I came home one day and said, Mom, I don't want to be called Billy anymore. So in kindergarten or first grade, I switched to Mitt and have been Mitt ever since. And Mitt Romney in the 1920s was the quarterback for the Chicago Bears. Oh, wow. Can you imagine? So I think they imagined that by giving me that name, I would have great athletic talent. Unfortunately, it did not go with the name. It goes with the genes, and I didn't get the same genes he had.
I'm probably the world's slowest runner. Years ago, Bill loves to run, or you know, and he wanted to do a 10K. So I said, okay, I'll do it with you. Well, about halfway through, I realized I was last. And so to save a little bit of my pride, I look around, I said, okay, I'm going to walk like I was doing this all the time, right? It was so embarrassing.
You know, I said, when I announce, I would like for you to be there. She was there when we announced May 21st at Atlanta Centennial Park. Major fundraisers. If we got a fundraiser where we're going to raise $500,000, I said, would you mind being there? She said, no, $500,000 will get me there. Winning the nomination, I want you there to share in that moment. You know, and on and on and on and on. And then you know what the last one was? I almost can't say it. Holding the Bible when I'm sworn in.
Emotional, huh?
My daughter Gracie, who is 12, she's brilliant. I call her my senior advisor because whenever, and she was on the campaign trail with me every day until school started, and she had to get back to school. But she'd sit me down at the end of the day and she'd say, Dad, you said this wrong. You've got to change your phraseology on something else, and you forgot to say this.
My wife and 3 children were Christmas shopping, and a tractor trailer broadsided them and killed my wife and killed my daughter. And my 2 sons were very, very badly injured for some time. And they fully recovered. And I think the proudest thing, moment about my children is how incredibly loyal they are to one another and to their... I married 5 years later. No man deserves 1 great love, let alone 2.
I was very independent-minded, but to my surprise, they kept re-electing me. And today, I'm even more pleased than ever that there's a lot more people looking at what our founders gave us and that we were on the right track at one time, and the American people now know we're on the wrong track, and they're looking for answers.
So you know the candidates that are arguably getting the biggest headlines throughout this primary season are polar opposites when it comes to political experience. When we come back, we'll talk to one who has never held elected office, while another one has already lived inside the White House.